I'm Dmitri. I'm 46 years old. Originally, I'm from Russia, St. Petersburg, and I'm here in Japan for 17 years. I run Cafe Absinthe, which is a dining bar, and also another restaurant, Absinthe Solar, a Mediterranean restaurant in Osaka. And I also DJ. I didn't really have any intention of coming here. I didn't know much about Japan, apart from geography and general knowledge that we study in school. But I met my ex-partner, my ex-wife, in Israel. We worked together in a Japanese restaurant. After living together 3 years in Israel, we want to see the world. We decided to travel a little bit. And the first stop was Japan. But we didn't plan to stay here for a long time, maybe a year or so. But things changed, and basically we found ourselves opening a cafe. So originally we came to Osaka, and somehow we had an idea of opening a cafe, even though we didn't really have a plan of doing so when we just came here. And also we didn't have much connections and also not much experience in opening a business here. But we just moved on, and in Japan you probably can buy a manual of how to do anything. There's a manual for any industry in Japan. There's a book. You can just go to a store and buy a book how to open a cafe. And there will be very detailed explanation about finances, about layout, about official permissions that you need to get, everything. So that's how we did it, and we opened a small place for about 30 seats. That was 17 years ago, and it was pretty mellow. No big mansions existing there at the time, and even though it was a pretty cool area with lots of different fashion boutiques, some Japanese fashion as well, but not too many restaurants, not too many bars, not like now. So we were one of the first pretty much, and we had an idea, we had a lot of different ideas of having a Mediterranean food, having a gallery with artists exhibiting on our walls and changing it usually every month, and also having an open cafe, which is quite rare for Osaka. In Tokyo I know that it's a little bit more common, that people tend to sit outside like on a terrace, or there are windows and people like to sit outside and be exposed. But in Osaka there was almost no place like this. But so what we did was we basically opened a place with a terrace and people could sit outside, but also the front window would open like a harmonica, and basically the whole place felt like it's kind of sitting outside. And then we also brought shisha, which is 17 years ago there was no place in Osaka doing that. And actually it wasn't that popular in our place either, but it was one of the exotic points. When we opened the place, it was a private restaurant. The first 2 years actually it was like we didn't know what we are doing food-wise. I think it was pretty amateur, the level of the food that we were serving. But slowly I think people started to like us. We didn't do any promotion, no advertisement. It was only word of mouth. But we were connected to a lot of cool people in Osaka, artists, musicians, DJs, and word of mouth kind of brought us people slowly, one by one. And at some point, probably 5 years later, it was pretty busy place, but it was in a very quiet neighborhood. So we were making a lot of noise with our harmonica kind of window opening, and all the noise and all the talking, all the music was flowing out to the streets. And we had a lot of complaints from neighbors, even though we were trying to keep it down and we were trying to close the windows and doors. But people would come out, foreigners would come out and stay outside and talk, and that would also create a lot of noise. So eventually our landlord came to us and said, guys, you have to stop doing events, or you have to close at 10, or you have to move out. So, and exactly at the same time, we got a phone call from a development company of Takashimaya that they're going to open a big extension to the department store with 33 restaurants, and they offered us to do restaurant there. And that's when we had to establish the company. Music is my passion. Music is something that kind of helps me going through hard times and through stress. And of course, listening to music and finding new music is one thing, but playing music for people is just a different level of joy for me. It all started from playing in small places, and it was I was usually the opening DJ or the closing DJ. Since I was working in a restaurant, it was more common that I was actually the closing DJ. So I would close the bar at 3 or 4 in the morning and go to play at like 6 in the morning. It would be the last DJ to play, for example. Of course, no money involved, just for fun. And again, slowly, you build connections, you gain experience, and people invite you to play more and more. As a foreigner, it is definitely easier to get through and get gigs, because just being a foreigner, you stand out. And of course, in Japan, people like to see foreigners as entertainers. You see a lot of hotels only hire foreigners as singers or musicians, even though Japanese people could be as good or better, but the image of a foreigner has always been in Japan as something that brings more attention, brings more people, and makes things more special. So as a foreigner, it was easier for me to get gigs, for sure. Buying records, at the time we were all playing records. Of course, it was not cheap. Still is not cheap. So that's one, obstacle in DJing. You can only, you have to spend all your money that you get as a DJ on records. Now, the technology moves on, and we all play with USB, so it's much easier, of course. As a DJ, it's definitely easier to be a foreigner. There are almost no minuses, because also adding to that, in Japan, even when you're a DJ and you're a Japanese DJ, there is a hierarchy. You have people above you, and you have to respect them. You have to show them the respect, and it's very structural. And if you play a gig, you have to be at the spot before it's starting. You have to do the sound check, and you have to stay. Even though you're the first DJ, you have to stay until the end, and that's the respect that you show to the place, to the DJ team. But if you're a foreigner, you can come whenever you want, you can leave whenever you want. You're not expected to follow that kind of hierarchy, and you also don't need to bow and show that much. It's much more close. Like, there is no distance between you and the person who is, let's say, inviting you to play. It's kind of up to you. Of course, you treat everyone nice, but you don't need to bow and feel like you're under. And as a business owner, I think there is that part that is similar to a DJ when you stand out. And so when you're a bartender or if you're a chef, being the foreigner, you already kind of have different potential just visually. So you do definitely have the advantage of being a foreigner. If you stand in a bar or stand in the kitchen, in the open kitchen, and people look at you, they show more interest, and they would probably be more interested in coming to a foreign restaurant where there's a foreign chef or a foreign bartender. Automatically, you get more customers. But of course, when you think about organizing the business and doing a lot of paperwork and going through a bureaucratic system, it's definitely easier for Japanese people to handle the business, because you're there, they're accepted, they are less questioned about credibility and a lot of things. Basically, Japan is a different planet. It's very different from anywhere else, I think, and it's very unique. It's mostly in a good way, in a positive way. I think the first thing that I notice here, but you don't notice it right away, you kind of notice the things that are around it, but what I see that what the main reason for it is the consideration for other in Japan that doesn't exist much in other parts of the world, I think. People are really thinking how to not to bother other person and how to not to be a burden, how to not to hurt others. And that is expressed in so many areas of our life, I think. I find the fact that most of the foreigners, the first thing they notice when they arrive here is that Japanese are very closed and they don't share their emotions, and they're very reserved, and they don't get too close to each other personally, they don't visit each other in their homes. But I think that the regional base of it is that they just don't want to be bothering. They don't want to bother you with their trouble. They don't want to bother you with their problems and personal problems. They don't want to bother you when they come to your place, because you will have to take care of them and you will have to cook for them or clean after them. They don't want to, they keep the personal space as well, because they don't want to intrude your space. Like when I lived in Israel, for example, people just talk to you like this, and that's normal. I mean, probably in Europe, and especially in Mediterranean, in Italy, in Spain, it's very common to be very close to each other, hugging and kissing, of course, too. Yeah. But in Japan, obviously, you keep the distance. Not only that you don't hug and you don't kiss, but you also don't speak too close. You don't speak with a loud voice. And these things are connected to the fact that you don't speak in the elevator, you don't speak on the train. You know, things like this are very difficult to understand for foreigners, especially when they don't live here. Why can't you speak on a train, for example? Everybody speaks on the train, yeah? But not in Japan. I think the Japanese modesty is also another thing that is very different from other countries. In the Western world, you have to present yourself, you have to fight for yourself, you have to make presence, the impression, you have to be confident. And in order to do that, you have to stand up and show how big you are. But Japan is the opposite. Basically, you can have the confidence, but you don't have to shout, and you don't have to tell people how great you are. Basically, you can do something that people will notice it. I'm 46, and I just tend to live my life day by day. I just try to learn something every day and get better at something that I do every day, and be kind of better myself than yesterday myself. You know, that's my goal. Advice for people coming to Japan. I'd say you have to keep your culture, and you have to keep your values, but you have to come to Japan or any other country that you go into with a very open mind, and you have to be ready to learn and to accept things, because there will be a lot of new things that you'll meet, and you have to be ready to change and adjust, and that way you can find the balance anywhere you live, I think. Well, I think I'll be very happy to see you guys in our restaurant and bar. Just come to visit and have a drink or food, and that's pretty much it. Yeah. Thank you guys for watching, and hopefully we'll be able to see you here in Japan soon.